Everybody take a seat. We're a little late starting. We don't like to start late. All right. Hey, John Eastman, would you mind leading us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. You do roll call, please.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Here.
Councilmember Fisickelli, Councilmember Jablonski,
Here.
Vice Mayor Brightcruz,
Here.
Mayor McKay.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mayor.
Could we please have a excuse for Andy Burns?
You don't need that. The town administrator apologizes for his inability to be here tonight. He was dealing with an issue, but we went through the full agenda and we told him to deal with that instead. So, if you need him, he said call him and he'd happy to chime in. So we thank you, Mayor and Council, for that.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Public comment.
Mayor, we have 4 speakers tonight.
Okay.
We have 4 speakers, starting with Delsa. Edmondson? Delsa Edmondson?
Come on, Delsa.
You're up?
You're up. You're the
You're
next
up.
contestant.
Sure it is.
I know I like to go last. Clean up, pinch hit.
Then
I was just-
hand
I
in your
just
form
wanted-
later, and then you get to be last.
TBA. to the annals.
All right, we'll use the microphone too, so.
I'm
we
sorry.
can hear-
There you go. That way we can hear you on the recording later.
But I don't have anything really to say because I haven't heard anything yet. I'm just here to kind of see if you guys are doing
Well,
what
we
I like you to
appreciate
do.
you coming out.
Thank you. I came all the way from Palm Beach in the rain. It's fun all day. But anyway, no, I'll sit this one and
Okay.
let you guys have a good night.
Thank
know?
you, dear.
Yeah.
Newell Hollingsworth.
Noel Hollingsworth, 199th Avenue. Yesterday was garbage day on 199th Avenue. Yesterday was garbage day on 199th Avenue, which didn't get picked up. We figured, oh, heck, they're just getting slow. Can't do anything about it anyway, so they'll pick it up today. Well, it's still sitting out there. Cats have been into it, raccoons have been into it. Any other animal that wants to has been into it. So there's nothing left now but papers. We don't have, and I see this as something that's going to continuously get worse. And this may have been our last pickup last Saturday that we will get. And the animals will have to pick through it, and all we'll have is paper. Because they missed this one completely. Saturday will be the next pickup. No need for them to come by tomorrow at all, because Saturday we get picked up, if we get picked up. So this group, Waste Management, is truly living up to their name as a waste, and with no management. So I'd just like you to know that we're not getting pickup out at West, and that Waste Management's doing a wonderfully wonderful job. Thank you.
Thanks, Newell. Next speaker, David Kaczynski, followed by Jeff Spear.
David Kaczynski, 6411 Holity. I echo Newell. I had the same problem Monday. Monday's our pickup, and I came home and get home 6:30 in the evening, and my trash is in the same place it's been for the 20 years that I've been there, and the prior owner, Joan Glickman, same place it's been all those years. I had to call town, and yeah, they came back and got it, but I shouldn't have had to do that. But the real reason I'm here has to do with, in my capacity as president of the Sunshine Ranches Homeowners Association, my neighbors are complaining to me about the speeding on Lou Ray and Mustang. And We are of the combined belief that it has something to do with this bridge that crosses from Appaloosa into the Shot Center, that I'd like to find out why they put that bridge there in the first place. And I'm looking for some kind of guidance where I need to look for if there's some kind of land use provisions that were created when they put that bridge there. Why did they put that bridge there? Couldn't have been there for public use, because you look at it, it doesn't look like it's a public access. It looks like it may have been there for emergency vehicles. And if that's the case, then I'd like to ask Cooper City, make it for emergency vehicles. But I would like to know where I can go and find out this information of where the land use restrictions were put for that bridge.
Cooper City, City Hall.
All right, thank you. All right, thanks.
Jeff Spear, followed by Barry Nunzig, followed by John Eastman is the last speaker.
Good evening, Council. I'm here with Ron Ellis, my partner. We're developing a single-home community called Reserve at the Ranches on 172nd Avenue. We wanted to come and sort of tell you what our concern is, and we hope to come back to you in the future for actual action. This project was actually a project that went into foreclosure during the recession. It was actually platted back in 2007. One of the requirements of the plat required a left turn lane into the community. At the time, the road was not a Southwest Ranch road. I'd like to read a few excerpts from a letter from the county engineer. It was a Broward County engineering requirement at the time in 2007. Pursuant to Broward County Land Development Code, 172nd Avenue was part of the Broward County Traffic Ways Plan. According to approved engineering plans for Southwest 172nd Avenue, the design speed was 50 miles an hour. The Land Development Code requires a construction left turn lane if the project access equals or exceeds 35 and generates 25 or more left turn lanes an hour. 172nd Avenue since then has been transferred from Broward County to the town of Southwest Ranches. In addition, during 2006, the town installed 5 traffic calming devices, speed bumps, along 172nd Avenue, and reduced the posted speed to 30 miles an hour. Since the speed is now less than 35 and the number of trips are less than is required, left turn lane is no longer required under the criteria for Section 5-195.11.6. And this improvement could be deleted as a condition of county plat approval. This was a letter from Dave Heisinger, the engineering plat manager of Broward County Engineering back in 2009, and you're welcome to have copies of this letter. In 2014, we came before this council, a little different council, but some of you are here, and we also presented a traffic study from a traffic engineer where he cited that the Florida Department of Transportation exclusive left turn lane should be considered at any location serving the public where speeds are 45 miles per hour or greater. And he also cited the Institute of Transportation Engineers, Transportation Land Development.
Go ahead.
That,
You can keep going. I'll give you a
okay,
couple.
thank you. Isolated left turns are recommended for left turn volumes of less than 10 vehicles when the opposing direction volume is at least 325. We actually have 8 trips, 5 inbound and 3 exiting trips based on traffic engineering criteria. So Broward County at that time when we came before said this was not required, it's unnecessary, and that they would support a delegation request to the county commission to remove this turn lane. At the time when we came to you before, and by the way, I have communicated with Dave Heisinger, has recently retired from Broward County Engineering, and his successor is a guy named DJ McGuire, and DJ's written me a letter saying they still support removing this requirement. So the last time we came, you weren't willing to support this and gave us 3 COs. We have 8 lots, only 8 lots. And that after 3, by the 3rd CO, we needed to build the lane. So we're hoping that we can avoid that and that we can come back to you and you would support us removing this requirement. For this smaller community, it's really unnecessary. But let me let my partner Ron say a few words.
Thanks for the opportunity to just spend a few minutes. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to drive by Reserve and see what we've done. You know, since we started and came before you, you know, we've tried to enhance our area as best as we can. We've worked with FP&L, and they actually were able to lower the power lines, you know, on our section of 172nd. We also took our asphalt driveway that was originally planned, and we put pavers down our entire street. So what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of asphalt. We've put in a nice entryway. We've put in a lot of greenery. By, you know, putting in the turn lane also is going to now require the the horse trail to be meandered. You know, we're the only, there's really only other 2 turning lanes to our knowledge in the town.
You're gonna have to wrap it up because
Okay.
I'm letting extend
And,
it to.
you know, one's the shopping center down the street. The other one is Landmark, where they have a lot more homes than we do. So we probably have the least amount of homes in any left turn or right turn. So we just like to have the opportunity to come back and just thank you for the opportunity tonight and appreciate everything.
All right,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Sure. The next speaker, Mayor, is Barry Nunzig, followed by John Eastman, with the absolute final speaker being Bob Hartman.
Good evening, gentlemen. Barry Nunzig, 163rd and Sterling. Well, it's coming up on budget time again. Hope you go through the budget and look for any waste that there may be. I got some places I think you might have some waste that you could cut out pretty easily. The first one is those new Welcome to Southwest Ranches signs. Signs are okay, but those signs, you guys are paying up to $10,000 each. That's absurd. I mean, if you go out there and look at them, do you really look at that sign and say, yeah, that's worth $10,000? If you do, you're a bad shopper. Second place you could cut money possibly is look at what you're doing with the jail property. That jail property was $8 million. I'm figuring we're paying about 3% on it. That's $240,000 a year. What are you doing with the jail property? All you did is put a tax burden on the people that we don't need. The jail property, and you just did it despite Pembroke Pines. At least that's what I think. And that's a sad fact. So there's another place that you can cut some money. Another place you can cut some money, get rid of the Southwest Ranches Volunteer Fire Department. Okay? Lee Bennett put an article in your newsletter the other month, said, and he was proud, we ran 154 calls so far this year. That was done at the end of May. If you do the math, it comes up to 151 days. So that's 1 call a day. I think the town of Davie, with their unit out there, can handle 1 call a day. You guys have the facilities here. You can go back through time since you started these volunteers being paid, which was always a waste and was done with fraud and lies, and you can check and see how many calls are run out there on an average per day, and you're going to find out it's 1 call a day. We don't need them sitting there. Plantation has a fire department that's part paid and part volunteer. They don't pay their volunteers to sit around all day. Why don't they pay their volunteers to sit around all day? It's a waste of money. Volunteers are supposed to be called in when you need them. Volunteers are supposed to live in the community where they're volunteering. Lee Bennett has people from South Miami all the way up to West Palm Beach. Those people don't qualify to be in that department. Okay? If you look at the roster that Lee Bennett has, he has 4 people that live in this town that's working for Southwest Ranches volunteers. But are they volunteers? We don't know. Because if you read the newsletter, he conveniently leaves out the word volunteer anymore. He's trying to get people to understand that, no, we're Southwest Ranches Fire Department. Just another little fraud that Lee Bennett's perpetrating. That is a wasteful organization. It always has been. It was put together with lies and deceit. Okay? They are not certified by the state. I have asked to see the paperwork to see if they were certified by the state to provide ALS rescue services, and they are not. It's a fraud. They've written in the newsletter that they can do anything that Davie Fire Department does. When you tell a lie like that, it's a fraud because you knowingly told that lie. It wasn't a mistake. Get rid of those guys. Have a nice day.
John?
And now for something completely different. John Eastman, 188th Avenue. About a year ago, you appointed 3 people to represent the town at the CFR 150 airport study. We've now had 2 meetings over the past 3 months. I was working the day of the first meeting, and Mark Modrich, the alternate, went in my place. I just attended a meeting this week, and I'm just here to tell you what happened. The first 2 meetings are really spinning the attendees up on the technical nature of what they're going to be dealing with. It's very complex, a lot of data, flight paths, noise nodes, a lot of things, and how they come to their decisions on flight routing and that sort of thing. Interesting point, the chair there did say that the outlying communities, being Southwest Ranches, Weston, Davie, and Cooper City, were just invited as a convenience to the cities, but they really didn't have to be there because apparently the noise impact only goes out 30,000 feet from the center of the airport. So they have to produce less than 65 dBAs at that 30,000 foot mark, and they're not even looking at our noise out here. In fact, they only have one noise sensor in Davie, and the noise sensor is configured. If the plane doesn't fly right over it, it records nothing. And the planes are being fanned in from all different directions, so the likelihood of catching a reasonable noise level on that sensor is nil. I brought all this up, and I suggested a few ways that they can work on relieving our noise out here, and the chair wasn't real happy with me, but I did get the names of the other 3 cities, and I'm going to talk to them. There are no state sunshine rules applying here, so I'm going to kind of get together with these other gentlemen, and we'll come up with a plan, and then we'll tell the county what we want. And they may listen or they may not, I don't know. But the first 2 meetings were basically just learning for the participants, and the real meat of it, I think, is still going to be a couple meetings away. But I will keep you all updated on it. And you picked some very good people because Mark is another American pilot, and Roxanne Culbertson works for the FAA in quality assurance. She knows this stuff like the back of her hand. And the 3 people that you have sent down there have outclassed everyone else at the table, so I feel good about that. One other thing I wanted to talk about was Florida Power and Light, my nemesis. That blow we had a couple months back had the tree come down on the road, and we had power out and tree fires and all kinds of mayhem. So I got around to doing an assessment on 188th only of the trees that are touching the power lines. And when I say the power line, that top primary line that carries the real juice. And just about half the homes have trees that were actually into the power line. And, you know, when it rains and they get wet, you get the brownouts, you know, your computer screen flickers. So I contacted the FPL tree specialist who had been to our HOA meetings a couple years back. And she said, well, I'm not in your area. She referred me to the right person, and I sent him an email. And I actually went down the street, recorded all the house numbers, and I sent that. 3 weeks went by. I also sent Bob the copies of it. Nothing. So I sent him an email, and I said, look, if you know there's a problem here, I'll take this to corporate above your head, and we'll see what can happen. Well, the very next morning, the crews were out on the street. But they only went down 61 houses and stopped. And he came, called me this morning, and he says, well, we're all done. I said, well, no, you're not. You've only got half the block done. And he said, yeah, but we took care of your problem. So he looked to see how many houses were on the same leg as mine, and that's how far they went, and they stopped. So I said, well, that's not quite good enough. In fact, all our streets haven't been serviced in 2 years, and they're all in the same condition. So I know another lady from previous experience. She's an executive, I guess, up there in Juno Beach, and I copied her on everything. And she got back to me today and said she'd take care of it. So that's where we're at with that. And I did copy Andy, I think some of it to you, Steve. And
Appreciate it.
but I told them we're a green community. We have a lot more trees than most people, and we probably need more frequent application of their services. And they just don't have a budget for it is the main problem. That's
Gotta
what.
wrap it up. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, John. Anyone else?
You have final speaker.
Final speaker, Bob Hartman, 5441 Southwest 198 Terrace. A lot of people get up here and complain about our taxes and the cost of the volunteer fire department, and I look at that as just a few bucks. For those who weren't here the other night, Councilmember Cruz put a presentation together. And although the numbers were somewhat argued because they were a little bit dated, I actually spoke with Captain Bach after the meeting, and he said, based on the numbers that Davey and the volunteers report on a monthly basis, these are still pretty close to right on. What I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is the issue we have with response time when we're talking in country estates. And it affects Rolling Oaks and it affects Green Meadows, but I think the problem is the most severe in country estates. According to the fire study we had a couple of years ago, we should have response time out by us within 4 minutes. Emergency. I didn't say a word when you spoke. Please extend the same courtesy. But you weren't supposed to be the last speaker tonight. Thanks, Keith.
We worked it out ahead of time.
So the point I'm making is that only 6.25% of our calls come in at less than 4 minutes. 72% of our calls are from 5 to 7, and 20% are at 8 minutes or more. 4 minutes, 8 minutes. I think it costs us about $70 a house a year for the volunteers. Maybe it's 80. I'm not sure if I got my decimal points. My numbers exactly right, but to keep that on par or to even bring that in is the difference between the guy who rolled his vehicle out there on 27 last week, and we heard from another neighbor whose father or father-in-law had to be picked up. That's the difference between life and death. So when I look at a few bucks for the volunteers, it's a worthwhile cause in my book, regardless of all the noise you hear and the disrespect you hear. They're well worth the town's investment. Thank you.
All right, so public comment's over. Public comment is closed. And we're board reports. Any board reports? Seeing no board reports. Council member comments. Who wants to go first?
I'll go ahead.
All right, Steve, go ahead.
Just a couple quick comments. One is just appreciate the effort of the administration, Sandy in particular, as our contract winds down with our current waste provider. We've had challenges the whole time we've had them, and now that we've signed a contract with somebody else, it's going to be even more difficult. I'll say this, that it says a lot about, whether you're an employee or whether you're a company, when the contract runs out or when you put in your notice to say you're leaving. That time is when you determine the true integrity of that person or that company. And it's a shame to see the service deteriorate and drop away the way it has here. So I know Sandy is working as hard as she can to keep those pickups in line and keep them happening. I do ask for some patience on the residents' side. Better days are coming as of October 1st, and so we look forward to those days. The other thing I wanted to mention, John Eastman mentioned FP&L. Appreciate that effort there, and kind of based on, kind of piggybacking on what he's done. I took that note and have had communications with Andy about town-wide, really, we need FP&L to come out and clean it up and cut back. I know we had just about a month ago, a little over a month ago, I guess about 6 weeks ago, we had a fire right across the street from us on a power line that caught fire during a storm on the tree. So it's definitely time that we get them out here and get those trimmed back. And so we're going to try and do that on a town-wide basis. Thank you.
Okay. Good. Want to go? Gary?
I have absolutely nothing. I'm good today.
Oh, come on. That's
we
not
do
true.
we do have the Education Advisory
Thank
Board.
you very much. I was going to say you're
tomorrow
going to skip that.
At the Equestrian Park. They've got a booth there. It's a Hawks Bluff night. It's from 6 to 9. There's all kinds of nifty baskets that are being raffled off.
I got to go pick up the light pole.
Okay, well, I gotta go deliver the beer. So, so don't feel like the Lone Ranger. But anyway, so I wanted to mention that's really the only thing I have on the calendar that's coming up. There is something
It's
that
food
comes,
trucks and everything, right? The whole
yeah,
works.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's food trucks, lots of kids. It's a lot of fun. There is something I want to mention that it has absolutely nothing to do with nothing. It's just something that I've always been wanting to bring up, and this is probably the only moment I'm ever going to remember it. And I only see this in our town. And once I say it, everybody will probably say, "Oh, I saw that a couple of days ago," or the blah blah blah. And in all my traveling in South Florida, I'm prefacing this, and you'll see why. I never see this any other place, and that is people stop to help a turtle get across the road. I only see that in our town, and the shocking part behind that is it's usually people under 30 who are doing it that I've seen. And I just wanted to point that out to. I see it like once a week on Griffin Road. I see it on Mather. I see it on Dykes. I see it in Sunshine Ranches and Hancock and everything like that. And that, to me, that speaks volumes about the values of our town. And I see it all the time. And I said this has absolutely nothing to do with nothing. It's just something I've always been meaning to bring up, and this is the moment where I remembered it.
Great.
That's it. I'll end on that note.
Awesome. Dee?
No, I have nothing.
Freddie? I'm good. You're good. All right. I think I'm pretty good, other than I think you guys got in your mailbox the bylaws for the volunteer fire department. I don't know if you got them. If you guys would take a glance at that, because I'm going to put it as a discussion item in the next meeting or two or whatever. Keith's got to update a couple of things there. You're still with the old firm on that, and D's not on there yet.
Oh, on the bylaws
Yeah,
for volunteer
yeah,
fire, yes,
yeah. So,
we will
just a
update them in
heads
the
up.
next
So,
meeting.
but we may make some other changes, so hold off another meeting or two. So just some thoughts. Other than that, I'm good. So
Mayor, I'll be super brief
Go right
tonight.
ahead.
I know a few residents spoke about their disappointment with LGL and their inability to pick up waste. On the disposal end, in the last few weeks, we did put them on notice of breach of their contract through numerous violations of that contract. They've been going back and forth with the war of letters now. It's hitting the press now because of the fact that we've put them on notice of breach. At this point, they have agreed that they'll walk away from that contract effective on September 30th. We're now waiting for Bergeron to similarly agree to that. They have not agreed to that yet. They would like to first see if they can work with us and their partner to cure the breach. So I'll keep you posted, but I don't want the residents to think that we're not doing anything. We are taking all of these things through the legal channels. And as the Vice Mayor properly stated, October 1st, it's a new day on the collection services, and it may be on the disposal as well.
okay. All right. Let's see. Legal administrative comments we're not going to have unless Russell has any. No.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion number 8, code enforcement commercial use. Robert Solera, I'm passing the baton to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Member of Council. There's a small PowerPoint that we, between the town administrator, Andy Burns, and myself, we created in an effort to illustrate what we're talking about. Specifically, back on May 1st of 2017, during a council meeting, we had input from residents regarding the issue that they encounter when it comes to the effect of commercial businesses in the town and the impact that it has on the rural lifestyle. As such, a number of issues were identified. One of the ones that were identified was the increase in traffic, which is well known as people have come to this dais and explained the fact that there's a problem with traffic. And it's due to the large business operations that are around town in certain areas. Staging of vehicles is another issue that has been, look forward and look into it based on the fact that those locations are creating the staging. Business waste placed with residential waste, increasing collection costs for residents, and this is more in a small businesses which use our bulk as a way of dispersing of their commercial things, as well as mulching operations which are happening at various of our nurseries. It was abundantly clear that the residents did not want any other code created, and the fact that we have codes in place which can be used to in some way curb this issue. It was more in a way of creating a balance between what the residents' lifestyle without imposing excessive regulations. So staff was directed by you all in council to look for opportunities in the code to protect our residents from the issues identified. Currently, the town, we are, and I went too far, I believe. Yeah. Currently, we are working with our solid waste haulers to make sure that those places where the bulk from commercial is being used are required to have a commercial disposal and a contract. And our goal is to prevent that the residents subsidize those locations, basically. To be clear, the mulching operation that is happening in some of the nurseries is illegal. Basically, under section 045050 of our code, this type of use is not included as one that can be used or used for the property. And specifically under section 045060 specifies that nothing that is not in this section, in the previous section 045050, if it's not there, it's not allowed, period. Materials being brought from other locations onto the properties, which is also illegal. Now, the current things that we do proactive are illegal dumping or bulk, unpermitted fill on locations that are bringing fill onto the properties, and unkept, vacant, or abandoned properties. Now, we are requesting or asking council if we could do some proactive measures, beginning with excessive vehicle traffic and a staging of vehicles, I'm sorry. And for this reason, that way we could accommodate certain residents to have their own businesses at the locations and being able to be accommodated. We also suggest a maximum of 3 vehicles based at any home-based businesses. And anything above 3 will be staging. And the last slide that we have is in reference to perhaps through the certificate of use being able to monitor these locations, having a yearly renewal for the certificate of use for these large businesses, limit the number of vehicles stored on site, and add language in the certificate of use that will allow for a mandatory or optional inspection during regular business hours. Basically, that's what we have come up with, and we are awaiting anything or questions that you may have.
Okay. Do we want to allow public comment first, or let's go first? And then allow public comment? I mean, we can go back and forth a little bit here.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple comments first, but really before the bulk of my comments, I'd love to hear from the public, so.
Okay.
If
All right.
that's all right.
Well, we'll go up here briefly, and then we'll pass to the public and come back to us,
Perfect.
if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Go ahead.
Good, thank you. So I appreciate, Robert, your work on this and the administration's work on this to do this. We had a workshop, I'm going to say about 90 days ago, 60,
Approximately,
90
yes,
days
sir.
ago, something like that. And got some good resident feedback at that time, things that, issues they saw, things that they saw that were right, frankly. You know, they were comfortable generally with the code, and I see this is reflected in your analysis here as well, so I appreciate that. I did want to just make a couple of comments from the standpoint that I think this is an important issue, number one, because all the feedback that we have gotten from the residents over the years, that this is something that stands out. But aside from that, I also wanted to make the point that what this is not is this is in no way to impact small businesses like accountants or things like that operate without any impact.
Tax engineers.
Yeah, things like that really have no impact, and I think that's clear from the presentation that we just heard that that's not what this is about. And it's also not about nurseries that do nurseries, that are nurseries. It's that's frankly central to who we are as a town. So it's certainly not something we want to negatively impact. It's the commercial side of large organizations that we want to have a conversation about, and that's what these proposals are directed towards. So
I'm going to jump in just for a second with part of what you said there. The commercial side, part of what we're going to come up against and come across is going to be people who've been here doing the illegal side for 30 years, and now we're going to say how you can't do it. But you've gotten away with it for 30 years doesn't mean it was ever allowed anyway. So those are going to be some of the hard hurdles that we're going to cross when we go through this. So,
Yeah, if I could jump
Sure.
in. And thank you, Robert. It was a good presentation. I think I think we need to do a little bit of homework first, and here's where I'm going with this. I think we need to define what vehicle is and how that vehicle pertains to the residents. In other words,
in the work.
huh?
In the work they did.
Well, yeah, but I'm thinking of the family with 5 teenagers, and there's 4 cars outside. Are they staging for a party? Are they staging?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not clear.
Right,
Is what I'm driving at. At one time, I had 4 boat trailers on my property, all registered to me. Okay, are those vehicles? I was allowed to have that. I mean, what I'm saying is we need to clarify what we're all talking about here. In terms of vehicle registration, business, all of that. I think there's some stuff that needs to be done with that. And do residential vehicles, somebody who actually lives there, does that count as a vehicle, for that?
there may already be a definition of a business vehicle.
I don't know that. I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm kind of looking towards.
I think
because
I think
know that.
ultimately within that, I don't think we're looking at that part where you're referring at all. I think we're more looking to people coming in to pay other people's residence, parking their car and jumping in another vehicle
I get
to go
that.
to work.
Or a business that has many business vehicles there,
Yeah.
whatever they are.
Yeah, no, I get that. I know,
With the
that's
signage
full of
on
the
it.
intent. What I'm saying is, I'm trying to avoid something 6 months from now that could blow up in our face
Right.
because we didn't discuss it up front. Is one of
Yeah. I
And
think
by the way,
our code guy's
I'm down
pretty
to one
good.
boat trailer right now, so I'm down to
have
one.
3.
So as far as that goes, and then we need to ensure. We need to find out: is a trailer a vehicle? Do we count that as something like that? Because there may be vehicles coming and going, and trailers may be staying.
No, that's like a recreational vehicle too. You got a motor home or a camper or whatever. It's
Well,
not
I'm
in
thinking of I'm thinking of the landscape trailers that
Oh.
that come around and things of that nature that are not really to like more power to everybody. If they got an RV, they've got this, they've got that. Rock and roll. That's why we're out here for.
We're going.
But we need to make all that kind of pretty clear.
Right.
Before we, pass any kind of.
Right, so, I mean, normally in something like this, and I would be surprised if it's not already in the code, but if it's not, it needs to be in the code, a definition of what a vehicle is, a business vehicle. Because we're not, in my viewpoint, I have no concern about resident vehicles, RVs,
Yeah, neither do I.
boat trailers, things like that. That is zero to do with what we're talking about. I take your point, and it's a valid
Yeah.
point. I'm not discounting your point.
I agree with you
It
100%.
needs to be defined.
Yeah, let's
But
just
I
make
just
sure that-
I just don't want the residents or people that are here to miss the point of where we're going with this and get distracted with that.
I
'Cause
really
that
think
is
this
not
is
what
a-
we're talking about.
I really think this is a good thing. I just want to make sure that we don't.
Overstep.
We don't overstep something
overstep.
here and take it to an extreme that we don't need to.
Dee, Freddie, you want to pitch in a little before we pass to the public?
No, I agree with Gary. I think we need to do a little homework and make sure that,
Well, we'll
Yeah.
let,
We're
we'll let
comparing
Robert
apples to
clarify
apples.
that. We'll let Robert clarify. Go ahead, Freddie.
I think the last we did on it, bring me up to date, I'm wrong. If you drove that vehicle and you lived in that residence, you could drive it. But, I mean, even if it's a semi,
Right.
can we have
Yeah.
that? Yeah, okay, I just.
Yep. All right. We're going to open it to the public.
Newell Hollingsworth, 199th Avenue. Got to be very careful here because you could have a individual who has multiple pieces of equipment that they use in their business. They could have a dump truck, a bobcat with a trailer, and one day they'll pull out with the dump truck and the bobcat and the trailer. The next day, they have to do some welding, and they have a welding truck. And the following day, they could be putting up fencing. So they take the regular pickup truck. So you're talking multiple vehicles right there, stored on their property. And if they're stored in the proper way, which is behind the house and behind shielding, there should be no problem whatsoever. But some people will complain about that and say that shouldn't be allowed. But that's an individual one-person or two-person business. Say a father and son, and the son lives at the house, so there's two trucks. And one will take the dump truck out, and the other one will take the welding truck out, or the regular pickup truck. Plus, they could have some other equipment in the back that would be necessary for their business. Those types of individuals are legal in this town, as I see it, and should not be penalized for having their own business. It is those businesses that I have, say, an air conditioning company. I started out small. I got more business, I got a second truck. I got more business, I got a third truck. Well, now I've got 5 or 6 trucks in the back. And each truck has 2 people on it. So, can I finish?
Go ahead.
So there's 10 people bringing 10 cars down the street, going in there at 6:30 in the morning, picking up their trucks and leaving at 7 to go do work all day. That sort of situation is what is the problem, where you have multiple trucks that are not residents of that household coming there, causing additional traffic on the streets, and really not giving a damn about the neighborhood. Those are the ones that we need to look at, not the ones that have their own home business and it's their own business and they're operating it. And so we need to define very tightly who gets code enforcement and who shouldn't. Thank you.
Thanks.
Just to take up what the mayor had said about a business that might have been here for 30 years or 25 years, that sounds like a grandfather type of thing that you don't say, well, just because you've been here for 30 years, tomorrow afternoon everything's over. And we have a lot of people that do have multiple vehicles, but they park them in a good way, and they're out of sight and they're pretty much out of mind, unless they're leaving in the morning, and then you might see them on the highway. The multiple cars that the gentleman was speaking about, I don't know, they don't come down my street, but I don't want a bus in my neighborhood either, dropping people off. I'd rather they drive their car, park in back of the home, and then, go out, do their business, and come back. But to me, the grandfather might be something you might want to think about rather than throwing people with businesses out, in other words,
I would tell you, in some cases, what we're referring to is people don't even own the property. They lease out their backyard or let somebody use their backyard, and somebody else is running a business out of their backyard. It's not
Gotcha.
their business
Maybe
at all.
we do a little research on those
Yeah.
pieces of property, sound to me, and then give them a notice or something. Yeah, okay, we're good.
Hi, John Eastman, 188th. My big deal is traffic, because we have children, pets, horseback riders, and the huge volume of traffic doesn't go with our lifestyle. So I look for ways to curtail that traffic. Vehicle storage, we have a lot of property owners that allow these nursery vehicles in overnight, and exactly what Newell said. They show up in the morning at 6, mount up, drive. We have other, for instance, air conditioning contractor. He's got 5 trucks. He takes deliveries from the big warehouses. Units are being dropped off. He's using the bulk waste to get rid of his trash. That needs to be ended. I totally agree with the single proprietor that lives at the house and he's got the vehicles in his name. Hands off on that. That's what we're about. The roofing contractor that's been doing it for 30 years, operating, crews and trucks off his property, sorry, that needs to end. I don't care if you've been doing it for 30 years, but you're non-compliant with our code. You can give them time to clean it up. And in fact, you have on several of them. The bulk waste business, and that's what it is, it's a bulk waste business where all these landscapers across 2 counties bring their stuff here. It gets collated, it gets mulched, it gets put on big trucks and sent upstate. It's a multi-million-dollar business, and our town has 3 of them doing it right under our nose. We get nothing out of it but all the traffic and aggravation and air pollution and noise, and they even run those mulchers on Sundays. So that needs to end. And, whatever is not generated on the property, don't be bringing stuff in. We have landscapers that live here. They bring their bulk. They put it out in front of their house, on the bulk day. So that needs some policing. You can pretty much judge how much the average person puts out. And when you see every bulk day, this massive pile, that needs to be looked at. Every town enforces their zoning, and we should be no different. I had a business in Opelika for 30 years. Opelika was very enforceful of their zoning and business regulation. Sometimes it was hard to deal with them, but you had to do it their way, and people that are operating here need to do it our way. We should make an effort to find out who the businesses are and maybe some sort of registration, that not for the purpose of generating revenue, but just so that we know who and where they are and how many employees they have. Because we shouldn't have employees coming to private homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Bob Hartman, 5441 Southwest 198th Terrace. Councilmember Jablonski, they say the first thing to getting over an addiction is admitting you have a problem. That's a boat hoarder at 4. Seriously.
I fall in that same category, though.
A couple of us do. I'm sorry for getting off track. The example was my neighbor across the street. He had a landscape business. He used to park 6, 7 rigs in his pasture. He sold the business. And when he sold it, we all knew it. He was excited about it and let everybody know. His next door neighbor went over and said, well, what about all these trucks? That's not my problem anymore. I don't have the business. Are they going to keep parking here? Of course. They're cutting my grass for free. A couple of us went and met with him. And now the new owner, a company called Rightscapes, you see their trucks all over town. They park in Pines, in the 2 lots that are out west. They pay. You know, I've been in business all my life. I grew up in the construction. Rightscapes, with a W. I was in construction for a long time, and my uncle went through the same thing. He used to park his 3 construction trucks in the backyard. This is up in New York, in Hempstead, the town of Hempstead on Long Island. They didn't care much about his first truck. When his second truck showed up back there, and these were construction vehicles, he started getting citations from the town. When the third truck showed up, they took him to court because, you know, he was clearly violating the town's laws. But he didn't mind paying the fines because he was doing pretty well at building houses. Well, I mean, that's the problem to me right there. These are residential neighborhoods. I'm completely comfortable with the backyard guy, you know, the guy who's got his equipment in the backyard because that's how he makes his living. But the guy that's running the air conditioning company, the guy that's got 20 rigs parked in the backyard like the guy used to have out there on Griffin Road, those people, unless they're really poor business people, they're probably making enough to rent a spot in Hialeah or Pines or where have you. So these are residential neighborhoods. It isn't fair to the neighbors to have all this traffic, the crews showing up at 6:30 in the morning, you know the deal. So I would encourage you to be very proactive on this aspect and take this to where it needs to go. And then as far as the bucket grinders that are out there making mulch, that's been a problem. That's just not right. I mean, 7x24 operations last summer by one of them. So, you know, they had such a backlog, they had to work all the time. Well, they're making money again. Take it down to Hialeah. Thank you.
Bob, stay up there just 1 second, because I've got a question I want to ask, and it's related to the drainage board and illegal fill and all that stuff. So what I want to inquire about, because I know we'd set a rule or a regulation that we wanted in play through the drainage dish, through our drainage board, about bringing in illegal fill. And one of them was that if we caught somebody bringing in illegal fill, they had to remove it before we could even discuss bringing something else. And I don't know that we've been implying or putting that forward. Rod might know out of helping us with this, but I know one of the reasons we did that is the fine wasn't big enough to be painful enough. They would just pay the fine and move on.
Cost of doing business.
Yeah, and they would go get the permit after the fact and do all that stuff. So I don't know that we've been putting that in play or not, but I would like to make sure that is in play, because otherwise there's nothing. It's the cost of doing business and there's no penalty. So,
well, has Robert followed up on any cases like that? Because that's
okay. Well, it's between Rod and Robert and the council up here. But I just was looking at you guys' aspect or position on it, because I don't think it's been that we've been handling it that way. Can anybody bring us up to speed on that, or? And it's not your fault, Rod. It's just, you know, you walked in and inherited. This was done long before you. I just don't.
Sure thing, Mayor. Rod, for the record. Rod Layton, engineer. And essentially, the way we handle it is, the way we've handled it since I've gotten here, is we get a situation where there's fill that's illegally placed, and most likely we get that homeowner or property owner to apply for a fill permit at that point. But we don't have them take it out and excavate it and do anything like that. So.
All right. So I guess Keith has a question.
I mean, if a lot of times they have an option, and the option is either to get the permit and then comply with the requirements of the permit. But if the fill is such a magnitude that they have to remove it, we have one this week, they have to remove it. So, and then the second part about that is a lot of times residents illegally fill wetlands. And when that occurs, the fines go through Broward County.
Well, what the drainage board had kind of put in play, and the reason we did it is because the penalty was minuscule compared to the amount of fill, and allowing them to keep it there. There's no punishment for what they did. So the thought process, I believe, was to make them remove what they brought in, The only other question was, do they need a permit to remove what they brought in? But to make them remove what they brought in, because that's going to cost them a lot more money, and then allow them to move forward to get a permit and go through the process. But that way, it costs them a lot more money, and if that word gets out, it won't happen very often in this town once that happens. So I don't think we've been applying that. Dee, go ahead.
If they're told they have to get the permits, unless it's an enormous amount, it has to be removed. But if they're told that they have to get these permits, okay, because you can bring in fill. They didn't apply for the permit, they have to get them. I mean, there could still be a small fine imposed.
Well, that's just it. They
On
do it
each
illegally
permit.
if they
On
get
each-
caught. But if they get caught, it's like a slap on the wrist, like $500.
But to make
Mayor,
somebody
if I may-
remove it.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
You got to realize that that scenario where you have a massive amount of fill does
Well,
not
massive or not, if you're
Okay,
if you're
let me-
in zone, if you are in
Right.
category 3,
And that's what I'm
which
trying-
is more than 5 loads,
Right.
or
And that's
3
what I'm trying
loads.
to get to. Most of the situations that we have here in our town are a small amount of fill based on the size of the property, and Rod could attest to that issue. We have had situations where the fill has gone beyond what could be allowed based on the size of the property, and those are the ones that we have targeted in terms of removal. But the other ones with the permit that the engineering department issues, where they inspect and they meet the requirements of the fill that they brought in, removing the fill makes no
sense.
sense in other
Well,
words.
what the sense is, they didn't get a permit to begin with.
True, and the fact
And it's
that-
it costs, it doesn't make the town any more money on a fine wise, but it makes them cost them more money because they didn't do the right thing to begin with.
Right, but
so
that-
if they got away with it, which maybe they didn't or maybe they did, but if the word got out that you're going to have to remove it if you don't get a permit, we won't have that happen too often.
Well, we have also instituted, correct me if I'm wrong, Rod, with the fine, there's not a fine, but the permit is a double fee. And it's a,
That's
I
a
understand
slap
the
on the
size
wrist,
of
that's
the-
no money.
I understand where you're coming
So
from.
the permit they get is doubled?
Yeah.
Well, so there's a penalty right there. I mean, to make somebody remove 5 loads of fill, just, to me, doesn't make any sense.
guys.
To me, I think that there was a time, and Doug, we've had this conversation, over the years. Yeah, exactly. When people were regularly, blatantly abusing this, and it was turning into a real problem for the whole town.
2009, 2010, I remember.
Yeah, and this was put in place, and I think it had a significant impact. I think the word did get out. There may be enough time now that people are starting to do it again. I don't know. I'm still of a mind that if somebody brings in 3 or 4 loads of fill and don't get the permit, and they're discovered, they're reported, code comes out and sees
That's not a big deal.
then they get the double fine. They have to get the permit, they have to pay the fine, and I think that keeps that under control. But the situation where they really are abusing it, and you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell somebody that's trying to skirt the rules and bring in some fill, and somebody that is just blatantly
Outside the box, completely.
outside the box. Yeah, and that I agree 1,000%. That haul it back out.
That property you were talking about, how many loads of fill did they have on there, Keith?
That's the one on Flamingo, and it's large amount, and it's not really per se rock or sand or anything. It's just debris that has been compacted. I mean, at one point, how high was it? 10 feet high, 10, 20 feet high.
Is this the guy behind Davy Feed?
Right. I mean, it was 10 feet,
Oh,
probably
yeah,
10
that's
feet,
a,
15
that's
feet
a
high.
different story. That one was
That's
a
the guy
different story,
George
but
had
I'm
to do.
saying
And
the average
that is
person.
the one, that one specifically is one that we have gone after as of yesterday. As a matter of fact, we were there, and we removed a number of trucks that were dumping there.
The problem in that scenario is he's a leasing guy,
Right,
and
like
he doesn't
he-
own the property.
That's
Actually, he's a lease of a lease.
Okay,
It's not even the
Mayor,
owner.
maybe I can have a suggestion.
Sure,
Move
go ahead.
Move it along in two ways. Maybe you set a number, whatever policy you decide, 5 loads, 10 loads, whatever that number is. If you have more than that number of loads of fill on your property, you are required by the town code to remove all of it and then seek a permit if you want to bring any of it back in. You can do that, okay? Another thing that we can do to get at what you're saying, which we really haven't done, and that is to go after the contractors who are the perpetrators of a lot of the illegal fill. Meaning that I own, I'm doing a fill job down the street, an excavation down the street. So I tell someone, hey, I have extra fill, do you need it? And I go and start dumping it on the people's property. A lot of times we hear people say, someone offered it for me for free, I need it for my property, so I accepted it.
Right.
Rarely, if ever, has the town gone after the contractor who delivered that fill.
What if it's not a contractor delivering it? What if they say you must come and get it, and they get a trucking company to come in and?
Different deal.
It's a different deal, but those are still going to be licensed vehicles anyway. The town can also do two steps if this is perceived to be a real issue with the council, and that is set a policy of how many fill loads that you believe are acceptable for them to remedy through double permit fees. Set a number above that number that they're required no matter what to remove all the fill. And then if you want to set a policy that the town shall report to the state of Florida every incident of an illegal fill in the town, trust me, the word's going to get out very quickly, when people are defending their licenses, that you better not dump fill in Southwest Ranches without a permit.
I like that.
All right, what's
Yeah.
the number? 5 or 10?
I don't.
Right now,
I don't know.
3 loads of fill is a level 3 permit, right? Anything above 3 loads or 5 loads?
Depends on the size of the property, Mayor, and I can get the sheet. I don't have it memorized, but I can get the sheet here.
Why don't we give them time to go back? I think you gathered the input of what the intent.
Yeah, because if you have ag,
What we'll need to do is
you don't have
Different
to.
story.
You
The
don't
ag
have
is
to pull a
totally
permit.
different, it's exempt. But what we'll do is we will go ahead and draft an ordinance, which will be our best guesstimate of what we think you're looking for. It's not
Okay.
to be set in stone when we
Yeah.
bring you an ordinance.
right.
And we
It's
can
to be
adjust.
reviewed and tinkered with. What Rod is saying now, the way I understand it, is the loads are going to be really based on acreage.
Correct.
So you'll just have to get with Robert and say, okay, for a 1 acre lot, for every acre, you can only have permissible,
Yeah, there's
whatever
a certain range,
load,
and we'll do
a
it based on the range
of
that's already
fill.
there.
Obviously, it's got to be a level 3 permit we're talking about here. We're not talking about less than that, because the level 3 is where the abuse happens.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there. We'll bring it back for your review.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
That's good to me.
And to go back a little bit, as to you were all talking before, there is a specific language in the code as to what a commercial vehicle is.
There-
And we're
okay.
not talking about RVs, we're not talking about, as Councilman Jablonski was indicating, trailers, RVs, recreational vehicles of that nature. We have language in the code. There's no question about it.
Some poor language in the code that's coming back to you
True.
for first reading next month, dealing with what is a mulching operation,
Right.
what side of the fence should be facing what direction.
Removal of invasives.
I'm sorry?
I hope removal of invasive species from.
Yeah,
construction sites.
removal of invasive exotics that have been issues. So we're slowly cleaning this up, but if Phil is a pressing issue, we'll bring that forward as well and go from there. But I think another part of this workshop portion of the meeting is to also let Robert know where you believe, anywhere else, if any, that you believe he should be proactive.
Right.
Right. Well, we really
in the
haven't got to
code.
the
We
meat
haven't
of
even
what-
gotten to that. I
Right.
get sidetracked. I apologize, but I
And-
just think it's been
and
sitting
that's-
dormant for a little while.
And that's part of it as well, so that we know what else to address.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll move on with the other stuff.
Any other public?
Yeah, sure.
Don't sit down too well, Robert. Okay, Robert Parker, Mustang Trail. Sunday, I sat in the living room and counted 8 truckloads of fill go down the road. So curiosity got the best of me, so I'm going to go see where it's at. So I go see where it's at. Monday, I was here at Town Hall with Andy, complained about it. And Andy sent Robert out there to check on them. They're building a barn, and to this day, there's 6 or 8 truckloads of fill going down every day to this parcel. Am I saying the truth? He was out there, and I checked on him.
Okay.
I wanted to clarify because it is a fact that there was originally no permit for the work that was being performed. A permit has been obtained, level 3 for the fill. No barn has been built. It's just the stalls and so forth for the horses. But they have a permit at this point.
Yeah, but they're still hauling fill every
I
day.
understand.
Every
We
day.
need to find out what the level 3, allows for a certain amount of fill, so we'll make sure that that's the correct amount, if not.
Yeah, well, they're starting to fill underneath the power lines now. Okay, getting back to number 2. You take Sunshine Ranches, and we have the most trash of any area. So let's have the trash pickup on Monday and Tuesday. That way the code enforcement people can't come out and check who's violating it. And I have a violator on my street that every pickup has too much. He's legal on the VW amount. But, sir? I beg your pardon, what did you say? No, we were talking about, okay.
Go ahead.
If I'm out of order, I'll sit
Go
down.
right ahead. Go ahead.
No, well,
Continue.
anyhow, I suggested to council people to have the code enforcement 2 hours on a Sunday or whatever, half a day, and let them take off a half a day on Monday to come out and check these people. That way, we might not have had the increase on our trash because we're all putting your head in the sand and don't look at the violators. Now, I know any one of y'all up there have somebody cutting your grass, but they didn't do a good job, you'd fire them. And that's the way I feel. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Good evening again, David Kaczynski, 6411 Holly. The issue about the number of vehicles, when I walk my dogs up and down Holly, or actually I go out Malaluca, I go out to Hancock, I noticed that there's 5, 6 cars that are at these sober homes. And it appears to be an excessive amount of cars that everybody just seems to be parking, and sometimes I've even seen more than that. The other concern that I have has to do with same property that Bob spoke of a second ago, at the crossroads southeast of Holly and Luray, where they're doing all this fill. I've been told that they're building some kind of a school there or something like that. And one of my concerns is that if people are coming in there to drop off their children or something, are they going to be allowed to park on the street to go in and get their kids and then come back out? Because that I don't like. And I think that should be somehow restricted to keep people from parking on the streets, because that interferes with our traffic and interferes with our rural lifestyle. So I think that should be something we can address. Thank you.
I think if you call code enforcement in that scenario, that they can cite them for parking in the soil.
How soon would they get out there?
Robert, what do we do about issuing tickets or citing somebody for parking in the soil? What's our procedure for that? Or is that a police?
Call the police.
Police, yeah,
It's a violation
Call
of
the
law.
police.
Davie Police.
Anybody else? Any other public comment?
I think we just missed something here.
Yeah, I just, yeah, it's a school. There's kids. How are you supposed to get your kids parked down the block
Where's
in
the
a
school
parking lot?
located, though? I'm saying they're still not allowed to park in the soil.
If you'll allow me, I think what they're doing is, because I've seen the equipment, they're making a parking lot on the north side of Palomino, whatever it is, and they're compact. They brought in roadblock fill, and they're compacting it. So that's not going to be a horse barn. It's going to be for a parking lot. And I think that they're planning, if they're talking about putting a school in, somebody
Is
needs.
this adjacent to the church with the school now?
No,
Okay.
no. That's a Holly and Luray? Southeast corner. And Robert's been there.
And they're putting a school, you think it's for a school?
I have no idea. I don't have
No,
a
there's
crystal
no-
ball,
there's
but
All right.
I know what they're
Listen,
doing.
We'll watch it.
They got a compactor
Yeah.
out there compacting a big
Okay.
area, and it's,
I heard
But-
it was a
but-
hospital.
huh?
He heard it was a hospital.
Three
Anyhow,
seconds.
Robert, if you could inquire and
Put that
see
in
if they
an
have a
email.
permit for what the work they're doing, or if they're doing a change of use.
But regardless, if it's kids, and there's just a quick point here, if it's kids, I mean, we deal with this every single day with Hawks Bluff. They park on the Chapels property there, the swales.
Yeah, but
You don't go and call the police and tow those cars away. They go in, they get the kids, they leave. It's not that big of a deal, but how did we get this in the middle of our town?
Okay, there's no school in Holity and Luray. I want to make this clear.
A hospital?
There's no hospital
Yet.
there yet. There's no department store. If someone's parking on the swale, and you can call the police. It's a violation of law.
Okay. So George, stop parking there.
Yeah, George,
And I
and
made it
volunteer
clear.
too. I'm going to get you. I watch you every day.
If you see PHI signs, you can call the police also.
His signs are everywhere.
Too funny. Okay. So public comment is closed. It's back to us.
All right.
Go ahead.
Steve,
Yeah, thanks.
you wanted to run with this. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm happy to run with it.
Okay.
So the things that I've heard tonight. So the number of vehicles, 3 commercial vehicles. I think, as Robert said, I think there's a definition of that in the code already. Maybe it needs to be tweaked and adjusted, but I think we all know where we're going with that, and if it needs to be tweaked, then that's good. But I'm for that. The mulching is one that honestly perplexes me. I don't know what the deal is with that, but it's one of the most blatant, breaking of the law in our town that I see every time I go. I'm going to say I see it a good 50% of the time that I drive home. I see these trucks pulling in that are jammed up with different kind of vegetation going in there, and I know exactly what they're doing. They're going to that mulching unit that's right on Griffin Road. It's been there for years, but I don't understand. Robert, can you I don't understand why that. It seems like that would be very straightforward to deal with, but it doesn't seem like we're able to do it.
It is if we receive a complaint, and that's the issue too.
So then that would be one of the things that I think, poor George out there. I hate to pick on George again, but somebody complained on George, and it was not George actually. It was he owned the property, but it was somebody else was leasing it from him and doing it. Right.
Yep.
So, but he got dragged through the muck over it
Yes, he did.
because it was on his property, and it took a while, but it got all cleaned up, and now it's great.
Right.
And so to me, I think
By the way, it's the same guy behind Davy Feed.
yeah, so I think this is one of the things that I definitely would love to see proactive, because it's
If that is the consensus
It's a
from-
clear abuse of the law, and why should it take a resident complaining about that for us to be able to enforce that around our town?
Who owns the property?
The one over there.
Uh-huh.
No, Florida Paradise, I think he's talking
I
about.
think it's called Florida Paradise. Is that? Would you remember? Is it Florida
Aren't we all responsible for our own properties, whether you're leasing it out or not? You're
I
still
can't remember the
responsible.
name now, but it's not Florida Paradise. It's somebody else. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. My point is that it is a blatant abuse that's been going on for years, and it's not right that somebody frankly complains about one individual and they have to put up with it. Somebody else who just doesn't happen to get somebody to complain
Well,
about it.
the good news about that one is
go on with this lucrative business.
the good news about that one specifically is come September 5th, they will be imposed $200 per day from September 1st when they were supposed to be compliant. So we're coming back to a hearing to impose a penalty
Okay.
if they don't remove all the items that they have there.
Well, I would support proactive on that. I don't know.
Me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Stop them. Why can't they just be stopped, period?
Well,
Isn't
they
there
can
a
be.
procedure?
Part
They
of,
to complain.
Yeah.
some of
Oh.
it's a little different for a couple of. The county allows it, but that's the county. Yeah, some of them are under ag, and they can do it under ag. So they meet all the requirements of the county, but they don't
think
meet
they
the
can do
town's
it under ag.
requirement.
I don't don't think they can, I don't
You
think.
can do it under ag.
On the ag,
Educate.
they could do it, but the problem is that we are more strict than the county. See, and in our code, it's not allowed. And that's the difference between one and the other.
So the question is, there's about 3 or 4 or 5 of those operations in
At least
town.
5. 4 or 5, yes.
So
2 of them, which we're working on right now.
do we want them to just shut down all 5 of those? Well, I mean, we're up here talking about
They're
it.
breaking the law.
I think we should identify those
I
just
think-
5. I think the consensus is from all you all, I presume that you all want us to go after any location, not just those 5 that may have that issue, correct?
We have a law in town. Either we should enforce it or we should get rid of it. And I think this is definitely one that should be enforced.
I agree. If these laws are on the
It
books,
not only is the noise and aggravation of it, that it's a tremendous amount of traffic.
Right.
It adds a tremendous amount of traffic. All these vehicles coming in with debris, all these vehicles leaving with empty trucks.
All right. Looks like the mulching operations in town need to go.
Well, they've been, you know,
Yeah,
out,
the
it's
next-
been outside our law for as long as we've been.
The law has been clear forever, even when Broward County, that you're not allowed to have such an operation. But to clarify it even more, we have an ordinance on the next agenda defining mulch and what an operation is.
Good.
Okay.
I did want to just touch on, and I think I've already touched on it, but I'll say it again, that, you know, the individual or the areas or the businesses that are doing things like mulching, but there's other ones that are clearly outside of the boundary of what our law allows, but have been doing it for a long time. I don't think that gives them a license to continue doing it in the future. It just means nobody has reported them. We're not changing the law on them. In other words, we're not changing the law on them, and all of a sudden a business, they came into town, they had a business that was allowable, and they've been running it for 30 years. Now we're changing the law, and we're putting them out of business. That's not what's happening here.
Correct.
We've had a law where you can't do this, and they decided to set up a business, in fact, to do something that's outside the law. And they've been able
Gotten away with
to
it.
get away with it for however long since they've been here.
Okay.
And now we're going to enforce the law. I mean, that's if you're going to run that kind of business, then this is a risk of doing business. And once again, we're talking about large commercial operations. We're not talking about 99% of the commercial operations in town, which are fine, which are home businesses, which are small businesses that frankly are part of who we are. That's, you know, that's a
So we're more talking about, if I can partial clarify, a nursery that's running a separate landscape business out of their nursery, that the guys come in every day, bring in all their cars, 7, 8, 10, whatever it is,
a nursery.
jump in all their trucks and maintenance things and go out and do residential lawn care.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. So you have a nursery that we love that, you know, has big open spaces, a lot of green. It's a beautiful place, which we don't want to impact that at all. But they've decided to do another business, as you just said, you know, and I agree 100%, where now you've got 10, 15, 20, 25 trucks coming in. First the employees are driving in the morning. They're all getting in the trucks.
Or
and the
speeding.
Trucks all go out, and then in the afternoon, all the trucks come back in, and then after that, all the people head back out. It's a tremendous amount of traffic, and it's something that's been not allowed under our code forever. It's not like we've come up with a new thing to put them out of business. It's not been allowed, you know, basically forever. And we need the ability to enforce these things.
Okay, now let me ask you on that same line. We've got a resident. It's their business. They're in the lawn cutting maintenance business, and they have 3 trailers and 3 trucks that they come in and go out. And let's say the son's running one, the dad's running one, and I don't know who's running the third one, but how do we want to kind of deal with that one? They're licensed, they're at that address, it's theirs, they're not leasing it out to anybody. It's a family-run business.
To me, I'm just giving my
Okay.
opinion. To
Yeah,
me, you know, I think 3 is a good number. That's 3 vehicles, you know, 3 vehicles, 3 trailers. I don't count the trailers. You know, I mean, we can't count trailers. We've all got a million trailers, you know. And
We're talking a lawn business for trailer,
Well,
but
but
yeah.
I've seen many trailers that, are used for the business during the week and used to haul other stuff around on the weekends, fun stuff, RVs, and I'm not RVs, ATVs and things like that, So I'm not.
I'm just trying to make sure we're giving him the right guidance, that's all.
I think I understand.
Counting trailers.
I think I
I'm talking
understand.
about,
I think what I understand is
commercial vehicle.
more locations where it has gone beyond what, let's say, a nursery operation is all about. And I think that's what you're referring to, parking of vehicles, traffic that's going on there, where you have, people that work for the company which travel there and go from there somewhere else. And it's not really nursery related. Is that, if I'm correct?
I think so.
Yeah, I think if you just go down 188th, you can get started right there.
Sure.
Freddie, you up? Anything? No? Gary?
I think it's a work in progress, and we need to pick a starting point and start.
Okay.
We may need to massage the details here and
Oh,
there.
without a doubt.
Absolutely.
But I think it's
Well,
Okay.
So to
we just
recap,
had the ethics guy here, he said no massaging.
so to recap, there's only a couple of,
good point. I think we maybe need to fine tune it and adjust it.
You were
Okay.
listening.
I mean,
Okay,
even
it's
if
all
I
in the
bring in my
verbiage.
own massage table?
It's all in the verbiage. Be careful of the words you use now.
Yeah.
so to recap, two things are added
Just
to our
lock
list.
me up now.
To recap, two things have been added to the list, which is mulching operations and large commercial operations with all of the nursery operation being done there, correct? Is that two items that you want for us to look into more often?
Well, let me add or kind of throw something to tweak. So we find somebody, it's their home business, they have the landscaping company, they own it, it's their house, but they have 6 or 8 or 10 trucks, not 3. Just a question, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, so, it's easy, that's a great point. So it's easy to talk about, the small accountant that has virtually, no impact, and then talk about the large, super large businesses that have a massive amount of impact, okay? We're in safe territory there, but yeah, you get into the middle where, using your earlier example, okay, there's, 3 vehicles there, they're all run by the family, business is going good, and, they get a 4th vehicle. Now they're out of compliance. Yesterday they were in compliance, now they bought that 4th vehicle. They got, they're keeping one of the old vehicles there.
And we have an employee that drives in to drive that 4th vehicle.
Even if they don't. I'm trying to think of an example that's, like right on the line, right?
But that's what Hialeah is for.
So they've got 3 vehicles. One of the vehicles is in and out of the shop. They're not so sure anymore, so they've got enough money. They get a new vehicle, but they're hanging on to the 4th vehicle in case one of the other vehicles needs to go in the shop. Okay, now they've got 4 vehicles. These are the things I know, Robert, you run into, right?
Sure,
So-
but for that
But you have to
specific
set
reason,
limits.
we have a specific laws where you could have, other vehicles, but it can be located off-site where you can see them or off the view from the neighbors.
Right.
And we have that in the code.
Right, and so I think that's why, to be honest with you, we can write, and I think in most cases, we're not rewriting the ordinance at all. We're just
not.
enforcing what's already there.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I think that's one reason why I think we are very fortunate to have Robert and his
Amen.
staff here.
Actually, it's my staff. I don't do much. They are the one. Them two back there, and that's based on the sensitivity training. It's important to always give accolades to them. They're the ones to do the job for me and make me
Yeah,
look
but
good.
your
And I mean that-
operation.
I mean that absolutely sincerely, because what I don't think anybody else wants up here is that when they go to that situation that I just described, where they just got the 4th truck, they're still only using 3, but technically they've got 4 trucks. I don't want anybody showing up their house with a hammer,
Sure.
to say,
Shut it
this
down.
business, shut it down, you guys have got to go.
Work with 'em.
But you guys have always been good about showing up there, explaining the ordinance, explaining
Much
how
as
you're
possible.
now outside the ordinance. Let's work together to come up with a way to get you back into compliance and, and move on that. That's different than the huge commercial operation that frankly needs to be shut down.
In my opinion, I always looked at it this way. It's a failure from us. When we take them to a hearing, it means that we failed. Either we failed on providing the information correctly, or they just failed themselves, and there's nothing we could do. We tried our best. We give extensions. We give everything possible to work with them. So,
Well, like I said, if you go down 188th, you can start there.
Hold on,
Because
Freddie, go ahead.
It's very blatant.
Robert, I want to ask you a couple
Yes, sir.
questions. To start with, these people, the first thing they go get an occupational permit from the county.
They basically, in reality, what they need to acquire is a certificate of use from the town.
Yeah, you have to, I mean,
right.
like, when I went to nursery business, I had to go get an occupational permit. But that doesn't, unless I don't know it, it didn't tell me anything I had to do.
Well, actually, it
Is there a
does.
set of rules?
Our certificate of use,
Huh?
letter and card that is issued, provides guidelines as to what you could do or not do as part of your operation. It's described specifically on the letter that is provided to them. Now, the problem that I see, and I have spoken to Vice Mayor in reference to that, is the fact that we have certificates of use which are from the year 2000, and there hasn't been any inspections after that. So when you started with 3 trucks, perhaps now the business is 20 trucks instead of 3. And that's why I presented the possibility of it, administration was looking into possibly having perhaps for those locations a renewal of certificate of use on a yearly basis to be able to perform an inspection on those big businesses. We're not talking about the doctor, or we're not talking about the accountant. We're talking about nurseries, large operations, to see whether what they started with when the certificate of use was issued is the same as they are now.
That's a good point.
Well, Robert,
What's the trigger
maybe you
for
can answer this question.
I'm sorry.
I think the biggest problem we're talking about is that big machine. Is
Right.
that what we're-
One of them.
It's doing all this recycling. Do they have to get a permit to operate that within a certain area?
They won't be able to get a permit to operate here because it's not something that is allowed in our code.
They do what?
They cannot get a permit from us because it's not allowed in our code. They cannot do it here in the town.
Yes, they would need one, but they can't get one because it's illegal.
We
Right.
don't allow it,
We don't allow it.
so it's illegal.
But they're using it now.
They're doing it anyway.
Yeah, but we've directed him to address all those people to let them know they have to wind it down and move on.
My
I think
question
you'll find out
was,
the guy that owns that machine lives in our town.
my
Yes, sir.
question is, taking it to, playing devil's advocate here. For re-inspections, you're an accountant, you have a small CPA firm,
Right.
something like that. I mean, does that require
No.
a re-inspection? I mean, what's the trigger point that we need to have for a re-inspection?
We have a home-based businesses usually is very specific as to the amount of space that is allowed for them to perform from. There's no signs allowed. There's no visitors allowed. There's no storage allowed. Nothing can be happening at the location that you could see. So those, I wouldn't count those as the ones that we will need to re-inspect whatsoever. It's more in terms of, large operations like I mentioned before, nurseries and what have you. Those are the ones that perhaps will require for us to be able to be there and see what's going on.
I agree with that, but where's
We have
where's the line drawn?
Well, the line is drawn when you have a home occupation. It's a home-based business. And we have a classification which is home-based business. We have a classification which is nursery. We have a classification for commercial. It's 3 different animals. And that's where the line is
So
drawn.
you're saying the line is drawn already at the beginning when?
Yes, sir.
When it's a classification?
Correct.
So for that, walk through what your recommendation would be for that business.
My recommendation is submitting
Certificate of use.
an application, once again, a renewal application. There wouldn't be any cost to it, but it's another application that we will do another inspection and see whether what happened originally is what is happening now.
On an annual basis, every?
I would say an annual basis is the best, or perhaps every 2 years.
I'm thinking every 2 years, yeah.
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 But at least in some fashion, every once in a while. It's
Right.
just that we have
On a
number of
regular
locations which, again, the certificate of use is from 2000. And we are in 2017. It's been 17 years. Nobody knows what's going on there.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. I would support that. I don't know how the rest of the council.
That's what I was getting at. What classification are you talking about where you've got to be?
I would say nurseries specifically, because of the large operations and nurseries. That's what we have as a large operation. Other than that, we have nothing else in this town in terms of businesses. I mean, we have a small pocket of business district, which is right next to Dykes and Shedern Street, which continuously, changes users or what have you, but it's small in terms of the impact that creates. It's more the nurseries, unfortunately, the ones that create the impact on the community.
Yeah, what I'm afraid of is that we're going to suddenly start over-regulating.
Yeah.
And that's a real slippery slope.
Sure.
Right.
And if we can somehow, can you bring this stuff back to us, saying this is what we're agreeing to? Because we're talking about a lot of stuff.
I agree.
right now. And, give us a
So
synopsis
we
on
see
it.
it all together.
Yeah, and then we can
Then
go,
pick
yeah,
and
yeah,
choose.
yeah, maybe, no, or something like that. as
I could
opposed to-
provide you, we could provide you with a number of types of businesses that we have currently, that we have a list of, which falls in which category, and see which ones are the
Well,
ones that create an impact.
what I'm more thinking of is just a policy direction on these different items that have, the bullet points that have come out. What do you think the policy direction is that we're giving you right now?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
make sure we're all on the same page here, not like.
So on the items that you already said for us to be proactive, to bring those as well, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
One and
do
two?
we
Okay.
go back for a final review and say, and sign off on
Okay.
it, as opposed to anything being.
Changing the world overnight.
I'm sorry?
As opposed to changing the world overnight in
Right.
a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I like
I'll speak to the town administrator, and perhaps we could have it for the next meeting, so you have a list on hand and see what you could do.
So I'm just trying to go through all the different items we've talked about, and make sure we've covered them. All right. So as far as proactive, we talked about the mulching. In the presentation, we talked about excessive vehicle traffic, staging of vehicles, those two. How would that work? I'm not sure.
Those are
how
more
that-
related to locations where, as the mayor indicated, they sublease the property and they park vehicles on the location for rent. Basically, they rent space.
Right.
And they operate from there. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, all right. Well, I would.
Clearly not allowed.
I would support that as well, proactive on that one as well. I don't want to go crazy with the proactive. I do have a general philosophy that either a law should be enforced or it should be removed or corrected, I have a tough time with laws that,
If we turn him loose.
I know, and I don't, like I say, I don't want to go
Where,
crazy.
I want to see a final copy of what we're
Correct.
all agreeing here to.
Correct, and that's,
If we can.
yep.
Sure.
I agree with you. So I think that's that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. D?
No, that's it.
Okay.
I agree.
All right.
All right.
All right, we done with this discussion for now?
Yes, sir.
Ask him to come back and bring us kind of what we have an understanding of what we're doing?
Yeah, so based on, I know
Go
what
ahead.
you just said and what Gary said and what certainly I think we're all saying is that we're not authorizing
We're not
any
turning you
changes
loose.
here.
No, actually,
now we've got a list,
listen, I'll
kind
be
of a
honest.
laundry list of things that we potentially are looking at and,
I'll be honest with you. Listen, I've worked on both sides of the story, proactive and reactive. Proactive has many pluses in some scenario, but reactive is better in terms of the fact that it's not that we don't want to be the bad person. We're going to be the bad people no matter what, because we're going to tell you what you can do and not do. But it allows more of a leeway or latitude in terms of what is out there that we could help facilitate to correct versus just hammering after them to correct it. And listen, knowledge is wisdom, and if you are able to impart knowledge, and most people don't know the law, it's as simple as that. They just don't. So,
thank you.
yes, sir.
Okay. I make a motion.
Go ahead, Gary, make it.
I think we got one more.
We got minutes, approval of minutes. July 27th, 17th regular meeting, and August 2nd, 17th special meeting.
Motion to approve.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Any public corrections? Because we've been corrected before. Seeing none, back to us. Want to call the question?
Councilmember Schroeder,
Yes.
Councilmember Fisickelli,
Yes.
Councilmember Jablonski,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bright Cruz,
Yes.
Mayor McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Awesome. Accepted.